Hello, I'm Alex Bean, the host of Factory for Good podcast. Today we're going to talk to Joseph Grenny. He's an absolute role model of mine, so I'm super excited to have him here. He is the author of Crucial Conversations. He is the founder of Unitas, one of the largest nonprofits in the United States, serving third world countries. And he also created Other Side Academy that serves homeless people here in Salt Lake City. He's an absolute killer in terms of his ability to help those that need to be helped. And we love Joseph, and we're excited to have him here today. I'm actually super excited. I'll explain why. But today we have Joseph Grenny. And Joseph, thanks for being here.
Delighted to be here.
So I don't know if you know the story, but when I got introduced to you, the person, Mike, who connected us, was like, I want you to meet Joseph. He might just change your life. And I was like, oh, I don't get that intro every day. And then we went to lunch, and I can honestly say from the things I've read, the things we've done together, and the things you're doing, it has been fundamentally life-changing for me. So I'm excited to talk about it, and I appreciate it that we've become friends now.
Me too. Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. So we got to shout out Mike for making that intro. But it's okay. So let's how do we know each other? I want you to talk about Other Side real quick, because that's kind of how we know each other now. Talk to me about what Other Side is, how you got into it, and then let's start there.
So 10 years ago, I helped start an organization called the Other Side Academy. It's a 2.5-year life skills program for people with long histories of crime, addiction, and homelessness. So we've got now 2 campuses, about 250 students. Collectively, they were on their way to about 2,500 years of incarceration when they came. And instead of that, plan B is come to the Other Side Academy, figure out how to reinvent your life, and then go back into society again as a different person. And it's the best place in the world. It's a place where you get to see souls changing literally minute by minute, and you get to be part of that micro experience. And I can't think of anything more inspiring. And the challenge that we had, that you've been really instrumental in helping us solve, is that nobody pays to come. I mean, these aren't people with a big fat wallet, and mom and dad are sick and tired of them if mom and dad ever cared.
These are people that are truly broken and essentially on their own.
Yeah.
They're on their own. They've kind of burned every bridge.
And our belief is that the funding model for the rehab world is entirely broken. The fact that that people are paying that are not the one with the problem creates all sorts of mischief. And so for us, it needed to be the people that have the problem that are financing the solution. So we run social enterprises. And you've been very involved with that. It's a wonderful thing to see people out there, 15 moving trucks today as part of the Other Side Movers, out in the middle of people's homes, touching everything valuable in their lives.
Okay, so hold on. I have to so we're less than a minute into this, and I'm ready. So okay, there's 2 things you covered. One is the fact, and I want people to understand this. Most rehab centers, or things with that focus, it would be like a mom or a dad or someone, a benefactor paying for their child or friend to go and get rehab. What you just said, and which I think is super powerful, is you actually want the people that have the problem, have the addiction, to raise their hand and say, I want to help solve the problem. And by doing it, you created, what do you call them, social enterprises?
Social enterprises.
So Other Side Movers is obviously one of the businesses. Essentially, everyone works in the business to help pay for the facilities and the food and the therapy and all the things that go into it. I had you guys move my house a couple years ago when we first got to know each other. And I told my wife, I said, hey, because we've never had movers, but I'm like, hey, we're going to get Other Side. They're going to come move us. And she's like, you know what? And I'm like, no, we got this. So they show up, and, they don't look like me.
It's a colorful team.
Colorful team, right?
Yeah.
You got tattoos on necks, and it's colorful.
Yeah, when FU is tattooed across your
when
forehead.
When FU is tattooed on your face, my kids were kind of like, what? And the way I've described it to a lot of friends is it is a spiritual experience watching them work. They come in, if I recall the process, they came in and they double-checked that there was no alcohol in the fridge, that they could just go in and be trusted to go. Usually there's 3 to 4 to a truck. Mm-hmm. And they sprint up and down the stairs, in and out of the house. And they're sweating. And to me, you're seeing someone take pride in working in a way that you just don't see in the modern age much anymore. They're not complaining. they're literally sprinting up and down your house. And to me, watching it was like, wow, these people. I wish my kids turned out like this. I wish that they could learn this type of work. So it's really inspiring to watch. So talk more about how that funds. Like, what does it fund? No, people don't know about the academy and the facilities that you guys have. So.
Yeah, so it's residential, so it has to fund the residential experience. We have
They live there, so everyone lives on campus.
250 meals a day, three times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so it funds the food, it funds the electricity, it funds those who have chosen to stay on the campus and make this their life mission. So the people that run the facility are just older peers, and they're folks that need to be paid as well. And so it's about an $11 million budget a year for 250 people.
That's generated from moving, and what are the other?
Moving, thrift boutiques, storage business, and construction. So those four businesses collectively generated $12 million last year, which is remarkable because these 250 people would have cost about $90 million to incarcerate for the time that they had outstanding. But instead, they're producing about $12 million a year, a surplus, which has allowed us to have more generous kinds of graduation services and things like that, all of which we can talk about. So it's a profitable nonprofit.
I love it. As a fan of capitalism, I'm a big fan of profitable nonprofit. But that's what's so interesting is like a lot of people ask for donations, right? Which is great. I'm not going to sit here and say that's a horrible thing. But what's interesting about Other Side is they say, hey, get us off the ground, and then we will go create a business. Like, with your Other Side, not what do you call it? Not the
Donuts?
academy. Yeah, Other Side Donuts,
Village,
right?
yeah.
The Village.
Yeah.
With the Village, there's a donut shop, which is the business. It's like, all right, so let's get off the ground with the donut shop, but then we can facilitate, and everyone who's trying to, we'll call it rehab or get back into society as a full member, it gives them an opportunity to earn their way back in, and they get like I've seen it, but I'd love to hear from you. Talk to me about that transformation of going from where they've been, where they sit on that bench, or they come in you as someone who's homeless, and they make it all the way to the other side of the coin, where you can see the light in their eyes and you can see that pride. Walk me through that. How does that feel to you as someone who's been involved with it for so long?
Yeah, and this is what it's all about. So I'll tell you about Melissa. She's the first person or the most recent person to move into a home in the Other Side Village. Raped at age 2. Grew up in a violent home. Found drugs at age 12 and was able to quiet the noise in her head for the first time. Forced into a marriage against her will at age 16. Abused by that person. Eventually starts a life of crime. Just the anger and the rage inside of her. She's doing grand theft auto. She's stealing guns. She's on the street. And then she discovers meth and thinks she found God. And the next 20 years are sex work and rape and torture and violence. And she's so sick and tired of this.
Here in Salt Lake.
This is Salt Lake City.
This isn't some far off country.
Yeah. This is first world. And so this is her life. And every once in a while, she has a moment of clarity and wants to get out of this. But our current system is so broken because it's a disaggregated system. You go someplace for one service, someplace for another, someplace. When your whole life is wrecked, you're never going to get it fixed. So she's been homeless for 25 years and having all the unspeakable experiences you can imagine. Yeah. And so the marvel of the Other Side Village is somebody like that comes in and the community wraps their arms around them. And who's the community? The community is just people that have done it before.
Yeah, other people that left the street and have got back on their feet.
Her last 7 years on the street, she was in active psychosis. She said that she was absolutely convinced 99% of the time that she was female Jesus. And all sorts of distortions and hallucinations that went along with that. Every 1% of the time, she'd stop and say, "I'm insane." And then just accept the fact that this will be the rest of my life. So she's got mental health problems. She's got trauma. She has no vocational skills. She's got issues with crime. She's got issues with abuse and everything. She comes into the village. She went through what we call the prep school. And so one of the broken things about the homeless system today is we tend to just stick somebody in temporary housing and assume the problem is solved. I mean, you stick Melissa in temporary housing. Yeah. She's going to go into temporary housing. She's going to be stealing your gun. She's going to get raped again. All that stuff is going to continue. Instead, she goes to the prep school. She's surrounded by 30 other people, all of whom have done what she's trying to do right now, who can confront her when she needs to be confronted, hold her accountable, help her do hard things. Tomorrow, she will move into a home at the Other Side Village because she's graduated from this prep school, and she has no more voices in her head. They're quiet now. She has a job. She said that one time she went to a mental health counselor who said, "We just need to get you diagnosed as completely disabled, and then you're going to be able to get checks for the rest of your life. She actually found that insulting. She thought she had more capacity than that, and in
Made
fact,
her
she
feel like
does.
she had no value.
And that's how our system
What's
gets you
her
to look
job
at
now?
yourself. She is one of the crew bosses at the Other Side Donuts. She's now helping us spin up a new social enterprise called the Other Side Foods, which we'll talk more about, I hope. But healthy snacks business. It's our apology to the community for providing all the donuts we provided, and she's going to kill it. But the most important outcome of that is not the funding model. The most important thing is she's redefined her place in society. She sees herself as mattering. She sees herself as having something to offer.
She's a boss.
Yeah.
Like I've been think about it. She's a manager of people.
What she is.
And goes from being, again, it's like you hate to put it into numbers, but from being a heavy burden and liability on our society to the opposite, to a contributor. And so she moves into a home. She'll live there for how long?
As long as she wants.
As long as she wants.
So it's a permanent community. She can stay the rest of her life if she wants, and she probably will because she has a mission there. She now wants to take people off the streets.
Yeah.
She has a special capacity to influence that nobody else in the world could do as well as Melissa because of what she's been through, and this is who she is.
So, okay, let's pause for a second, right? Like, we haven't talked about your career. We'll get into that in a little bit. But obviously you've had success in the past with your career and the things you've done. But now you find yourself interacting every day, and not just interacting, but being taught by, learning from people that have been on the streets, or they're drug addicts, or they're prisoners. What's that like? Like, what are you learning? How do you feel? Is it like, because it's just such a disparity of backgrounds and experiences, but yet you go there, and I've found, even in my small interactions, shocked how much I'm learning from everyone, and I think I'm teaching them as well, but just that back and forth when we have such different backgrounds.
Yeah, and I think the differences in backgrounds are cosmetic, and those cosmetic differences disappear as soon as you spend much time with anyone. You start realizing, I've got my version of her problem. I've got my version of his problem. What this community is about is learning to be a community. And all of us struggle to be in a community. In our families, we struggle. We've got conflicts and pettiness and disagreements. And in our workplaces, we struggle to be a community. And this is a place that is perfecting community. Their ability to be honest, to support each other. There's no pretense there. There's no hiding and faking. And the bane of every organization is hiding and faking.
Yeah.
And so the fact
you could
that,
argue First World is very good at hiding and faking. It's actually like the greatest, polished hiders and fakers.
Yeah,
so.
and they don't do that, which is why the businesses run so well. So you've used the Other Side Movers, and we hold them up. They're the #1 rated moving company in the entire state, not out of pity, but because they kick butt on everybody else that does this job. Why? Because there's no hiding and faking. Because when problems happen, they get confronted, they get exposed, they get dealt with immediately. And so they're learning to do something that the rest of the world is sitting up and paying attention to, and I do too.
What do you think people like? Obviously, that we're not advocating, hey, I hope my child has an addiction and goes to the other side, right? But how do you think you could talk to someone and help them understand what they learn without being in those situations? Does that make sense? Or is it not possible?
I think all of us have the potential to learn it. The downside for people like you and me, and I don't know your whole life story, but if your problems aren't acute enough that you're forced to your knees, sometimes you don't dig as deep to learn and grow. And the blessing that comes from Melissa's life is that she was forced to her knees. And so she was willing to get to a place to say, I want to rethink everything about how I approach my life. And I benefit from it because vicariously I'm picking it up. And I realize when I see her struggling with pettiness or dishonesty or laziness or something like that, that she's me and I'm her. And I'm inspired to dig deeper myself because of the example I see. So we're all Melissa.
Okay, so how did you get here? Let's go back a little bit to your career. Where'd you go to school? What'd you graduate with?
So I went to Brigham Young University, studied social science, and very quickly got connected with a guy named Stephen Covey who was starting a business back in 1980.
Some people have heard of him.
Yeah, once in a while you get them. And what fascinated me about the field of social science and organizational behavior specifically is it lets you ask the two most important questions in the world. And that is, why are people behaving the way they behave? And how could you help them change? And to me, that's the essence of being a good leader, being a good parent, being a good citizen, is really understanding why people are doing this and how to help them do that. And so I came naturally to problems like the one that Melissa faced, to trying to understand, and it would have been more of an intellectual question to me, except we were kind of forced into confronting it personally. I've got 2 boys that got into drugs. and they started in and out of jail and were deep down that path. And the more I got into it, the more I started realizing that I knew almost nothing about social science, that I knew almost nothing about what was going on in their world and about what kept them trapped in that and about how to really help somebody change. I thought just a good lecture now and again
Yeah.
would do the trick. And so we had to deal with it. We had no choice. And I guess my belief is if you're going to have the misery, you might as well share the message. And anything that we learned, we thought ought to be public domain, and we ought to be willing to offer it to others as well. And that started us down the path that's led to the village and the academy.
What I mean, because I read your book in one sitting. It wasn't long, but I mean, I read your book in one sitting, which is the relationship with you and one of your sons
With
had
Seth. Yeah.
with Seth and his addiction recovery. And it was kind of like what I found really interesting. What my takeaway was is the analogies you were using were, it wasn't about how do we help Seth and how does Seth make better choices and how does Seth just be better. It was more of you being like, okay, I actually had to change my perspective as the parent to have more empathy and to understand more and to put my Seth lenses on so I could at least get in that hole with him and at least understand a little bit more. What was the, not the book, but what was that like with the son? Like, how did you get to a point where you felt like you finally kind of had a glimpse of understanding it without actually being in the same hole?
Yeah, I think that the two big insights that came out for us that have helped me to show up in a healthier way ever since are that, number one, it's not my job to fix anybody. That really the only thing I can do is slow down their growth. I can't speed it up. And so the way we intervene for the most part slows people's growth down. We enable, we support, we fix problems for them, or we yell and we become the bad person and we distract them from their own misery because we become the scapegoat for it.
They can hate us, not identify their own issues.
Yeah. And so that's number one, is just getting to a place where I realized it was never my job to raise my kids. It was my job to be a good human being and to play the parent role, but they're going to raise themselves. They're going to, and I'm not talking about a passive parenting role. I need to be active too. But the second big insight for me really is that the best way to be a positive influence is just to have a healthy life myself, which means holding boundaries, which means managing my own life, which means showing somebody what it looks like when a life is well managed and well run. And those two things liberated me to show up in a different way with Seth and my son Samuel, who still struggles today. And so that's what we're doing, and that's what we do at the academy. That's what we do at the village, and it works. It helps.
Was that your bridge from, I'll call it a for-profit world to in our analogy, a factory for good, and changing your factory and saying, hold on, we got to retool and we're going to think about what I'm spending my day doing? Was that the change, or did you get into Unitas and stuff prior to that, and did walk me through kind of the for-profit, working, making money, to what caused you to switch and be like, hold on, let's actually do something else with our time and energy?
I heard something from a guy named Joe Christensen years ago, a church leader, who said that if your giving isn't costing you something in your life, if there's no sacrifice involved, then it's not giving. And that really inspired me, so that even while we were in the midst of the earning phase of our lives, we realized we needed a habit of giving. We needed to be taking something off the top and not something off the bottom, and making our lives about something that was bigger than ourselves. And so that discipline helped us to be paying attention to problems in the world and trying to get involved actively in solving them beyond just writing a check, but trying to have some dry powder to do that. At the time that we got involved with the academy, this was more a divine intervention thing than anything else. It's not because I'm a good human being.
Yeah.
It's because we really felt a mandate from God to do what we were asked to do. I would have never had the guts to say I'm going to spend the rest of my life with 250 criminals. I wouldn't have thought I had anything to offer. I had no idea how to wrap my head around it, but I knew it needed to be done, and I knew I was supposed to be involved. So that's really what pushed us in this direction after we'd sold our company.
How does your motivation change in day to day when you called it your earning phase, or when you're building your company, to what you're doing now, right? What is the difference in your motivation?
That's what I'm so pleased with, because it hasn't changed a bit. I had the benefit of being in a profession that felt like a mission all the time anyway. And I know everybody has different things they do. For some, there's more of a technical challenge, or they like the industry or whatever. But for me, at least, there were kind of spiritual promptings that led me into the career I was in. It was always about trying to improve lives. And I was doing that in a corporate context and trying to help companies improve their performance. But at the end of the day, it was also about that person's happier at home than they were before. So the transition to now saying, I don't get a paycheck for it, but I'm still deeply involved in asking, why are they behaving this way and how do I help them behave that way? It's seamless. And I'm still doing both. So I'm still working for the man, the private equity that owns my company, and loving what I do.
Can we talk about Unitas? How'd you get involved? Like, tell me kind of the origin of Unitas, how you got, tell everyone what it is. And
so Unitas was trying to make a difference around third world poverty. And for me, it was interesting because here you've got people that live in broken economic systems, and yet there are positive deviants that even in those broken economic systems are finding their way out.
Yeah.
There are people there that are doing entrepreneurial things that actually in a broken economy are able to prosper and to elevate themselves. And so it fascinated me that there was a social science solution that had an economic component to it as well. And so this was microcredit. And
so
back
microloans in third world countries.
And so it was, I think the evidence was clear that this was a powerful tool for helping people to emerge from poverty. Not the only tool and not an end all, but it was important. And particularly some of the group lending processes that were more social in nature. And so a group of other people and myself, all business people and all people that really think that market solutions are the most sustainable and scalable, we decided we were going to find little nonprofits that were doing small amounts of microcredit work and ask if they wanted to become for-profits and help them scale like crazy. So we worked with one that had 15,000 borrowers and got to 15 million within just a few years. An equity event came out of that had a $2 billion valuation, and so people started paying attention to the investability of microcredit, and billions started pouring in, and so it had a transformational effect on that sector.
So you're going to say, what country was that in?
Oh, India was a primary place where that demonstration took place, but many other places.
There's a theme here. I don't know if you've caught it in your own stuff, but it's like everything you're doing is a nonprofit, for-profit, for the betterment of the person. It's like no matter what you're doing, it's the same thing, where you're taking causes that says, hey, it doesn't always have to be like, I do think that sometimes people feel like it's a black or white conversation. Am I doing this for money or am I doing this as a charity? And what I love about basically your career, Unitas and Other Side is you're like, why aren't those fused more? Why can't we be proud of the work we do and the profits we gain and the value we can drive to people, both with our work as well as with our giving, whatever that looks like.
I think so, but let me interject there because there's a secondary principle that will be easy to pass, that I believe that one of the flaws in the nonprofit world is it asks too little of the beneficiaries.
Okay.
That one of the reasons we don't solve many problems long term is because we create these giveaway programs that actually weaken the sense of efficacy of the people that receive those services. And the most important asset any human being has is their sense of efficacy, my ability to solve my own problems. And so when my nonprofit experience with you persuades you that I had to fix something for you and gee, you should be grateful to me, I leave you weaker than when we started. And so I think the market solutions piece is great for scalability, but the other justification for it is that kind of relationship with somebody in a market-based structure, like at the academy, when people graduate from there, they feel proud, not just grateful.
Yeah.
Grateful too, but proud.
Well, go back to Melissa. I mean, just using that analogy, right? If you just gave her a home, you'd be like, here's her home, be grateful. And yet nothing would have been solved. Even if she was grateful, it wouldn't have mattered both to her.
She'd trash the house. She'd become a hoarder. It would look like crap. And
But really, what you had to give her back was her sense of self. Now, these people with Unitas, like let's say in India, you can, maybe there's a name or a person you can remember, but it's like it's not always a sense of self. Sometimes it's just they need an opportunity. They need, they're in a broken system or they're truly in a sense of poverty. Where it's like, how do you make sure, and how do you go about that when you evaluate other charities or when you talk to people? What advice would you give to them to be like, yes, you have to look for that, where they're putting the beneficiary is required to do something or raises themselves up? Like, what does that look like? How do you look beyond Other Side and Unitas? How do you see that out in the world?
Yeah, I think the principle is to start by saying, how little that can I do and how much can they do? That's where the problem ought to start, not how pathetic are they.
From
and how
a
much,
giver, from the donor's perspective, how little can I give?
Yeah, what's the lowest force intervention that gets the greatest effect?
Okay.
And if you aren't disciplining yourself by measuring outcomes, that's a whole nother conversation we can have. The whole nonprofit world stinks because there's almost no accountability for ultimate outcomes. It's all just about anecdotes. But that aside, starting by saying what is the most responsibility that you can take, so that at the end of this you have that sense of efficacy. You've demonstrated this. So even in India, where the entire world is broken, it's a caste system, all sorts of things were against people. The greatest poverty is spiritual poverty. The greatest poverty is them saying, I'm trapped in this system, I'm a victim, there's nothing I can do to ever escape. That's the real problem. Because if you don't solve that, even if you got somebody a better job or you provided a house to them or put their kids through school or something like that, they're still going to have that mindset. And so the beauty of microcredit was that they're borrowing, it wasn't a grant,
Yeah,
it wasn't a gift. And
There's
so
a
I get the
responsibility
dignity of
to it,
saying,
yeah.
yes, you charged me interest and you actually benefited from this transaction. I'm a different person in this relationship, and I built my business, doggone it. And the fact that I'm selling more tortillas or pan bread or anything like that, that's me.
Yeah, it goes from this relationship to more of this relationship.
That's right.
So I've been struggling to define the word impact. Like with Factory, we've kind of set out the tone, at least to start, to impact 1 million lives, and we're trying to recruit as many people as we can to join us to do that. We know that we're novice and we're learning and trying to figure out what that means. How would you define impact? What does it mean to truly impact someone's life?
The first question you got to answer before you can define impact is, are you solving an asset problem or a behavior problem? And most of the really wicked social problems in the world are not asset problems. So an asset problem is, my brother-in-law's house burns down, he needs a place to stay, he's missing an asset.
Yeah.
And so I happen to own an apartment, I'm going to let him stay in that. And so that's an asset problem. They're clean. And so if you provide the asset, the problem is fixed, and probably it's not going to recur. A behavior problem is where my habits and my decisions are contributing to the problem. So yeah, his house burned down, but it's because he put a lit cigarette next to his bed, and it's characteristic of the way the guy lives his life. He's sloppy, he's irresponsible, and he has accidents every week. Now if I provide him an apartment, I actually make the problem more difficult because I'm reinforcing it. I convince him over time that he's not responsible for consequences, and consequences are what motivate in life. And so if you're trying to define impact, the first thing you got to do is to say, is the impact just solving an asset problem, or is it solving a behavior problem? At the Other Side Academy, our problem is not that people were on their way to 2,500 years of incarceration. Problem is that they've had a lifetime of crime, addiction, and homelessness. And so our outcome is drug-free, crime-free, and employed. That's what we're after.
Say it again.
Drug-free, crime-free, and employed for 3 or more years. So we follow everybody for 3 years after they've left the Other Side Academy, and we know every single person, whether they're still drug-free, crime-free, and employed. And we hold ourselves accountable for that because this was a behavior problem to start with. It wasn't an addiction problem. Addiction was just consequent to everything else.
A consequence to the behavior. How do you, what's the success look like at Other Side?
So there are different graduation possibilities. The minimum graduation is 2.5 years. So if you stay your 2.5 years, go through the graduate program, 72% of our students to date are drug-free, crime-free, and employed. If you stay longer, which about half of our students do, it goes up as high as 93%. So this works. And the reason the system has improved over time is because we scrupulously measure how everybody is doing, and whether it's embarrassing or whether we're proud of it, we put that out on our website.
Yeah. We have had this conversation about assets and behaviors, and it's one of my favorites. I know this thought's coming to my mind as you're talking, and this might for some people will be really impactful. For others, they might want to skip it. As a parent, we all have kids. They all have problems, whatever the level of the problem is. Our instinct is, if we love them, we'll help them. We'll jump in. We'll solve it. And when I hear you talk about assets and behaviors, it's very difficult, very, very, very difficult to not give an asset, or to not fake like it's not a behavior problem and be like, no, they just need more opportunity. But it can feel very draconian. It can feel very extreme to say like, well, I'll never talk to my son again. How do you handle the extremeness of when your son or your daughter or whoever, when they make a mistake and it's a behavior problem? Where do you start when it's a behavior problem?
Yeah, I'm glad you're teeing that up, and it is the special challenge of the people probably listening to this podcast, because it's easier when you're a parent and the answer is, I can't help. I can't buy you a new car. I can't get you out of debt. I can't pay off your credit cards that you maxed out. I can't do that. But when you can, and you're saying, I won't, I choose not to, that takes more maturity. That takes a different perspective. And so I think it's important with our kids, and we've tried to do this with ours, to explain these principles, that there are differences between assets and behavior problems, and we're not going to fix your behavior problems, and that your responsibilities are your responsibilities. Setting that boundary with kids early on is important, because once you start sliding down that slope of treating everything as an asset problem, you're screwed. And what you've done is killed your kids.
So what do you do?
Mm.
Yeah, it's so hard. And there's not one answer to every problem that's
No.
out there. But I've had my own things where I have to sit down and literally write it down. What is happening? Is this an asset problem, or is this a behavior problem? Both in my own life and talking to other people, and you gave me that exercise. One other thing, I know that we've had this conversation, and is people at any stage of their life want to start doing good, right? Because like, as you said, you came out of college thinking like my for-profit world, I want to think about how to help people become better versions of themselves. And a lot of people actually that are joining Factory for Good, they follow the newsletter, and they want to have these conversations. Whether or not they have the income, the dry powder to donate to Other Side and things of that nature, people are sitting there and saying, well, I want to get involved. And I know you've given me some of the steps that you should take as you think about getting involved, whether or not you have money. Walk through how you would evaluate a nonprofit and whether or not you should get involved, and how you would kind of stage that as to something, to figure out where to put your time and effort.
Yeah, the first evaluation for me is going to eliminate 90% of nonprofits from consideration.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
Which, unless they're open to reform. But its first is their mission clarity. Are they clear about the results they're trying to achieve, and do they have a credible way of measuring them? That tells you about the integrity of the leadership team. And if they've got no integrity, then they're basically in the grant chasing business. And that's not to disparage their souls. They probably want to do good in the
have
world.
intent to do good, but
Yeah, but we're not. And there are many nonprofits that are doing more harm than good, but it doesn't show up on their annual report. Because they're undermining efficacy, they're solving problems that are really weakening people's sense of efficacy and things like that. So number one for me is mission clarity, and then credible measures. And if they fail that test, then the next question is, are they willing to reform? Because there's a lot you can do without a checkbook to come in and help them get a clearer strategy, get clear about what they're trying to accomplish. But if they don't want that, again, I'd head for the hills.
yeah.
I wouldn't be part of that. Now, there are others where it is an asset issue. So if you're saying, I want to be involved with the arts, and we want to get a new opera center built downtown or something like that, because you just want that asset to be available to people, good on you. And that's a simple world. And but you still ought to be asking yourself, well, why are you doing that, and what are you hoping happens? Is it just that you and your family get a box seat, and so you get to see great shows?
Yeah.
Or are you hoping about usage, or hoping that it increases the amount of artistic interest in the community? And so there still are potentially measures to pay attention to.
How would someone get involved with the Other Side? Is there a way for people to get involved, or?
Yeah, there's three ways. So the first way is patronize the businesses. So we have the best damn donuts in the world. And so if you're a donut person and you're in Utah.
Okay, hold on. I have to say this. So, because I do like donuts. It's like if I see a donut, I'm eating it. I could have just had tons. I'm still eating another donut. It is actually like striking. It's a striking experience when you go to Other Side Donuts and you have people that have been homeless making your donut. Okay. So when you see it, you can see that they've had a hard life, right? It's not like they're a suburban soccer mom. You can tell they've seen some stuff. So you can see it in their life that they've seen stuff, and yet they're making this donut with such care. And this donut isn't just like a Krispy Kreme donut where they just slap it and ship it out. They're all like so beautifully made that you're like this. I actually find it, I've thought about it as part of the therapy for this person who's trying to find value in themselves, is as they're coming back into this world like Melissa, and you see this donut, and you're like, this donut was made, it's handcrafted. It is designed beautifully. It is it's like an art, which is crazy because it's a donut. But there's something very striking about someone who's been homeless not that long ago, making this beautiful donut and taking a ton of pride and saying, like, here's this beautiful donut. That's part of the experience to me when you go there.
It really is, and you become part of the story, and they love to tell the story, and the story is impeccable. It's clean. It's if
It
Disneyland
is.
took over Krispy Kreme, this is what would happen,
Yeah.
and that's what we were after, and they've accomplished that in spades. So just patronizing the businesses. If you
Other
need a
side
moving company,
movers,
yeah, the
thrift
thrift boutiques, the
stores,
storage
get a
business,
donut. Yeah.
yeah. So watch for those, and patronizing those really is it's inviting people into the world. It's inviting people to be part of the larger community, and it's validating the work that they're doing. And so that's number one. Number two, obviously donating. So as you mentioned, the Other Side Village, we've got 450 homes to build. And we're trying not just to build a village, we're trying to create a model. The homeless services sector in the United States is broken, as evidenced by the fact that we keep doubling the amount of resources and getting no better results.
Well, that's what's interesting. And by the way, I want to clarify. You said there is the Other Side Village and there's the Other Side Academy, right? The Other Side Academy is operating under its own funding model, so it's not asking for donation. As the village is starting to get kicked off, that's why there's donations to be had there. But it's funny because I've had this conversation with a lot of people and the things they care about, and they're like, well, if we just donated more, if we just spent more on it. And look at homelessness as an example, but across a lot of other things where it's like, it's not about just the money spent. It's actually the model of which it is utilized and how it can become sustainable. And that, to me, is what's so interesting about the village. I mean, the academy too, but the village is, if it works, we have like, if we took all the money the government was spending on homelessness and put it into a model like this and had people of your caliber and all the people that are there helping run it, you would see a total change in like, oh, if someone does end up on the street, because it happens, there's choices made on plenty of sides.
Absolutely.
That when someone has a way to work their way back into society in a model like this, it's truly inspiring because it's a true on-ramp back to society.
Yeah. Yeah, that's well said. And what we're doing at the village is a perfect illustration of this asset versus behavior problem, because the institution itself will be self-sustaining, which shows what we're dealing with is the fundamental behavior. People are changing. And so, helping to build the village is important. And what we're demonstrating with the village is that we can have 500 homeless people concentrated in a 40-acre site, and the neighbors love it. And where have you ever heard that?
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
is not in
exactly.
my backyard. This is, please put it in my backyard, because we're bringing a donut store and we're bringing the food business. So we're going to bring a cafe and a nail salon and a pet services. And so all of these are going to be
Everything's going to be clean. The grass is cut. It's just like that. That's part of the whole component of it.
That's
is
exactly
treating
it.
with,
And
respect.
so the neighbors love it. We had only 10% opposition from people that just really didn't understand when the city council took the vote on this. And so that model needs to be demonstrated. Can you imagine if people from San Francisco and Seattle and Portland came and said, wait a minute, this thing is self-funding now? So 2 years from now, it will be self-funding. They'll be generating enough surplus from the social enterprises that the village will be operationally self-sustaining. And so for at least those 600, problem solved. And then the question becomes, is it scalable? Well, of course it is. If you can do one, you can do another and another.
You mean donuts will sell in another market?
I suspect.
Yeah, I suspect too. So you said how many houses are you trying to build?
450.
450. And how many have been built right now?
About 60.
About 60.
Close to 60.
We'll send this out. Obviously, we'll let people know. And obviously, this isn't just about Other Side Academy, but to me, when Megan and I started to look at a lot of different things, just to get our kids involved, putting their hands on opportunities to serve, Other Side for us has been truly inspiring and really fun for our kids to, we do the Christmas wrapping thing, which just takes an hour. It's not a big deal, but when they're wrapping presents next to the drug addict and they're having a great conversation, it's fun because they don't usually get that type of interaction. Okay, so it was patronize, use the businesses, help donations with
Donate,
the village.
and then volunteer.
So how could they volunteer? Like hey, I don't have money, but I do want to give my hands and time and mind. What does that look like?
Yeah, the beauty at the village is that since we're building this big community, there's lots of things to do. Planting flowers, planting trees, coming out and helping on an activity day. And there are people that are coming and teaching things. If they've got cooking skills, we got a lot of people with no cooking skills that are moving into homes. And they don't know even how to put nonstick stuff on a pan. And so there are lots and lots of opportunities to raise your hand and say, I've got a skill or I've got time, and just be part of the community.
In Factory for Good, we have 3 pillars: purpose, relationship, and legacy. And relationships obviously about the people you care about the most, which is typically family. And all the things that you're learning with the Other Side, with Unitas, with crucial conversations, which we didn't even talk about. From what you're learning in that space, in that world, what's the one thing you would take and try to implement in every family? You'd try to give to every parent and say, this is something you would focus on, or a lesson you would want them to learn and try to implement into their family.
Oh yeah, throw me into that briar patch. I'd love to answer this question because the thing that inspires people the most when they visit the village and the academy is the level of honesty that people have with each other, and not just honesty, keeping your promise. Their ability to be intellectually honest, emotionally honest with each other, to tell people how they really feel is what creates the intimate relationships they have. I mean, we live in a world today where we have such shallow relationships, and they're getting shallower by the day. And the reason is because we don't know how to connect. These are communities that know how to connect, and they do it by telling each other the truth.
It's almost scary, by the way. Like, what I mean scary is like when you sit down and have some of these conversations, you can tell, you're like, oh, this is a real conversation. And it can be very exposing.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, I can't, or this isn't just pleasantries and where are you from and where do you work? It's like, we're getting to the core of who Joseph is or who Alex is, and it can feel intimidating. And so let's drill on it a little bit further, right? Like, I have young kids. My kids are 15 to 7. And, you know, I'd like to think we have a decent relationship, but how do you bring that rawness, that depth into connection, into a family, like without having to go through, you know, I've been into some of these sessions where obviously when you talk about your drug abuse and the crimes you've committed and you have those honest conversations, that takes you to a level that my 7-year-old's not going to hit right now. But how do you do that more so in your family?
I think the only reason these conversations at the academy and the village are so intimidating is because we have them so seldom. It isn't because we can't have them more often. It's just because we don't. And so they seem unusual and they seem invasive or they seem uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And obviously there are times sitting next to each other on a bus where you're not going to go into this kind of depth. But boy, at home and with people that you're working 20 years with in the office and things like that, why the heck not? I sat next to somebody at the village the other day, sat down, said good morning. He said, hey, how'd the surgery on your finger go? And told him about that. And I said, what's on your mind? And he said, well, you know, I've been thinking about stopping masturbating, but I'm not sure if I want to do that.
And you're
And I
like,
thought, we're off and running.
we're here.
Yeah.
We are at a level.
We just landed.
Yeah, I love it. But
But the threshold, the activation energy to have that conversation with him is so low because there's an assumption of familiarity there.
yeah.
And I love it because if I was struggling with something as intimate as that, I know I could just open it up as quickly, and I'd have 4 people that had some life wisdom to offer me to support me in that.
But why are we so afraid? And this might be a much longer question to answer. It's so easy in we'll call it a comfortable life. You have food, you go to school, you're safe, right? My kid's life and a lot of people in this area. It's so easy to stay at that high level. How was your day? Good. What did you learn at school? Nothing. What's going on? Not much. And it's like, that takes a lot to be like, no, hold on. I want to look you in the eye, and my soul wants to connect with your soul and have that conversation. I almost even like the question you just said. What's on your mind? Any other, I don't want to call them tricks, but any other things you've learned in your life to help facilitate that conversation? So when I go home and I want to talk to my kid, because I'm desperate to connect with my 13-year-old right now, she's just in that phase. Like, we have a good relationship, but she's in the phase of like, I'm good. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I want to connect. And it's hard. What advice would you give me to do that?
I think that the primary impediment that we have is that we live in a status-seeking world, and we're hardwired for status.
Sure.
I mean, we live in social systems where we know that's a survival skill in a lot of ways. But the problem is we learn a distortion, a false belief about status, and that is that hiding and faking is a way to maintain status. And it isn't. It's just a way to maintain alienation. It's a way to distance ourselves from relationships. So we're just used to a society where that's the norm. It doesn't work, but we still don't fix it. And so when you get a taste of it in a community that doesn't suffer from that false belief, it becomes intoxicating. You start wanting more of that.
Yeah.
And so I think if in our families we could create microcosms where we don't hide and fake. And it starts with mom and dad, because if mom and dad feel like they have to be stoic and they've always got to look like they got no problems, of course the kids learn to do the same thing. They don't learn what you say, they learn what you do.
That's one of the things I've enjoyed about the other side is it doesn't take any money. It takes time, and it takes like get to know, volunteer, give your time, whatever you need to do, hire them to move your house. When you interact,
even if you don't need to move, just hire them.
yeah, just hire them. Yeah. I mean, they'll come and move some stuff around. I mean, yeah. But like when you're in that environment, there is this rawness, and I think that that's one of the right words to use to describe of like getting beneath those thin layers of pretendness and to have real conversations. And I hope, as you really dig into people's lives that have real issues, you do realize you have your own issues, but you need to address them. You need to uncover some stuff and say, hold on, how do we actually make a difference or make an impact?
Yeah.
So thanks for coming today and really appreciate it.
If I can end by endorsing your comment there, I think what the nonprofit world needs more is more of the for-profit sensibility. And so to the degree people have done well and can bring in not just their checkbook, but to bring in that sensibility of a bottom line accountability. It'll make all the difference.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Joseph.